the white, it shows better. No, it's all right.
Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome to all those in Europe, South Africa and Israel, and good afternoon and an equally warm welcome to all those in North America for this very special session being brought to you by Edgware United Synagogue in London. And I say to our guest cantor, Joseph Malovany, welcome back after a long absence to Edgware United.
Thank you very much, Spencer.
The cantoral music that you just heard was Meir Machtenberg Shehecheyonu. He kept us alive, from Cantor Joseph Malovany's first LP recorded in 1970, Rejoice with Jerusalem. I chose it for three reasons. Firstly, because he was our cousin in Edgware at that time. Secondly, because you won't find any of that LP's individual pieces anywhere on the web. And thirdly, as a tribute to his father, since he remembers him when he was a very small child reciting Shehecheyonu and Hallel every year on Yom Ha'atzmaut, showing his pride and dedication to B'nai Israel. So let's start with your background and your early childhood and how your parents discovered your musical talent at a very tender age and realizing you were a wunderkind.
So first of all, Spencer, thank you so very, very much indeed for inviting me to participate in your outstanding programs. Your name goes before you. The world talks about that program that comes from the Edgware Synagogue, with this wonderful, wonderful edifice of Jewish religiosity, Jewish life in London. So thank you very much indeed. My wife Beatrice is sitting next to me. She's watching it from behind. Usually she controls the situation, so she not always wants to show herself, but she's here. So, you know, I was born in Tel Aviv, and when I was a little boy, at the age of 3 already, age of 4, I used to take a chair, sitting on a low chair and then a higher chair, and I started clapping on the chair as if I was playing the piano and singing a song. So my parents took me to be tested. At that time, there was a conservatory called Shulamit in Tel Aviv. And they, after they tested me, they told my father, alav shalom, that yes, your son is very musical, both in terms of musicianship, well, not a real musician by profession, but very much a musical with a lovely voice. And yes, he should study, should learn, and advance himself towards any aspect of music that he may choose. So that was the beginning.
Right, and I think that your parents, although they didn't have very much money, decided to get you a piano. And in fact, I understand your mother sold her wedding ring to acquire the piano.
Absolutely, she did that. She sold, and there was a man who had a shop in Rehov Ben Yehuda in Tel Aviv, and he, or maybe Dizengoff or Ben Yehuda, they are parallels anyhow. And yes, my mother sold her wedding ring, but as soon as I started making, becoming a professional chaz much later in Johannesburg, I sent money every month to my parents, and I told my father to take my mother to a store and a shop of jewelry and buy her back as similar ring as possible.
Right. So you went to Bilu. Can you tell us about that? And
yes, of course. Yeah. So the Bilu it was a twofold institution. One was the school. It was a primary school, and I was in from Kita Aleph, from the first grade, all the way to the 8th, including the 8th grade. Also, Bilu has still this wonderful shul, wonderful synagogue, where my Rebbe was Shlomo Ravitz, Chazan Shlomo Ravitz, who today, when we hear about Kharkov, he was a Chazan there, but today who knows whether the shul is still standing there in Kharkov, and after that in other places in Latvia and in Riga. And Ravitz, when I was in the 3rd grade, I ran over to Ravitz and I asked him, please test me, I would love to sing in the choir. He tested me, he stopped me within about half a minute. He says, you are in and you will sing soprano. And as they said, the rest is history. And but it was Ravitz, the great Rebbe. He was already retired as the cantor of the great synagogue in Tel Aviv. And there was no great synagogue in Yerushalayim. There was Yeshurun, but not a great synagogue as there is today. But Ravitz taught us Nusach, he taught us singing in the choir. At the age of 12, I remember before Rosh Hashanah, actually before Slichot, there must have been, Ravitz always went for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur to a hall, which was also the home of the Israel Philharmonic, Ohel Shem, in Balfour Street, of all places, Balfour Street. And so they always had a young man to conduct the choir with a chazan, a professional chazan. And I think they must have had some kind of a dispute. And 2 days before Slichot, the first night of Slichot, I was approached by the principal of the school and Ravitz, you will become the conductor of the choir. So I told them I don't know how to conduct. Yes, they say, yes, but you know music. By then I was already a student in the Conservatory of Music, and you understand music, you know the repertoire, you know how to take a key You don't have to use the Camerton, the tuning fork they permitted, but there is also something that you blow, and that was not permitted halachically. And I remember that I conducted the choir slichot with the Chazan, and there was a man there who was the Gabbai and the Baltkiya. He blew the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, Mr. Yari. He was one of the very few who had cars. He had a car. And after the slichot, he came to my father and to my mother, and he said, "Come in my car, I'm taking you home. That's my contribution to the success of your son." And so I'm now at the age of 12.
Right. Elliot, is it possible to put up a picture of Ravitz?
Do you have a picture of him?
We have a picture of him. If our facilitator could put it up on screen.
If not,
maybe we'll come to it later. So that was at the age of 12. So what happened when your voice broke? What did you do in your teens up to the time you were conscripted into the Sahel, the Israel Defense Forces?
Of course. So what happened was, I remember 5 weeks before my bar mitzvah, I woke up on Shabbat morning to go to Bilu, and I remember saying to my father, I think the voice is beginning to change. I felt that it became lower, somewhat lower, not as it was before. And my father said, no, not yet, not yet. It will come, but not yet. But I felt it, and I was right. And so during the mutation, during the change of the voice, which eventually turned into a nice tenor voice, I continued studying the piano with the best teachers in the Academy of Music. By then, I already entered the Academy of Music. And also all the theory of classical music. I stopped singing, but I continued conducting, and I studied more and more music. After that, later on, no, that's not Ravitz. The picture is not Ravitz. There was somebody else, but that's not. But I know that Ravitz was there, but that's not Ravitz. That's Joshua Weinreich.
Take it down a bit, and take it down a bit, up a bit on that thing, please. Up, and you'll see that that's the invitation when he was davening in the Or Hashem.
In Or Hashem, correct.
Right. And if you look there, the entry card for a Shabbos with Ravitz there, if you look at it.
Yeah, it was 500, not even shillings, 500 whatever, ma'ot or whatever it was.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so continue.
Yeah. No. So, but then at the age of 15 or maybe even 16, I was approached to conduct a choir in another place, another shul, and so I davened Shachris. I became a Baal Shachris, I davened Shachris Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and then ran to the other shul to conduct their choir. They started much earlier, so I was still able to finish the Musaf on Rosh Hashanah in that other shul in Bugershof Street, running back to Bilu to take over for at least part of Musaf. And but that enabled me also to make a few lirot, a few, not even shkalim, but eurot. Anyway, so lirot. And I continued studying. And when I entered the army, slowly, I felt that there is a nice tenor voice coming out. Because before that, I did it very quietly so that I shouldn't hurt the vocal cords. And that was very important, and I'm so glad that I thought about it. And even Ravitz objected that I should daven Shachris. But it was a wonderful experience for me. specifically about the Nusach, because Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Shacharit davening, Shacharit services, the Nusach is far more complicated and much richer than the Nusach for Musaf. And so I did that. And I remember I davened in our shul. We lived at that time in the suburb of Tel Aviv, Yad Eliyahu. And one Friday night, they asked me to daven. And I brought a couple of guys to be the choir with me. And I remember there used to be a pianist who used to accompany Chazonim in Tel Aviv. I forgot now his name. And he lived in Yad Eliyahu. And when I finished davening and I came down the bima, he came over to me and he kissed me. He says, "You're going to be a great chazan." I couldn't believe it that you have such a lovely voice. So that was already when I was 18. I joined the army, of course, and Rav Goren, who was the chief rabbi of the army, a great Talmid Chacham, great scholar in Talmudic issues. And he met me at the base in the army where they decided which unit each young man was going. And he says, "Oh yes, I know you, I heard you are going to come to the Rabbanut HaTzva'it, to the military rabbinate. And in that case, in that capacity, you will have to teach davening, to daven in camps, to teach even officers, even rabbinic military rabbis, to daven the proper way as it has to be, and as the tradition is, or was, is." And then towards the end of my service in the army, and I mean, to tell stories, I'm writing a book now, but to tell the stories of what was going on only during the 2.5 years that I was in the army and what I've accomplished at that time, it was mind-boggling, but it gave me tremendous experience. Towards the end of the service, there was a knock at our door at home, and a man came and spoke a bit of Yiddish. He asked if they speak English. Well, I knew a little bit of English. My father did not know. My mother knew a little bit, because when she came to Israel in 1933, as a young lady from Hungary, from Siget, where Elie Wiesel came, she went to Berlitz to study English. And she did catch, she was good at languages. And so he came and he said that he was the president of the United Hebrew Congregations of Johannesburg, the 3 main Orthodox shuls in Johannesburg. And they want to invite me to come to Johannesburg to be the chazan of the Yobel Shul, to train the choir. One of the guys will conduct. He left. I ended up davening and conducting the choir at the same time. But everything is experience. And everything is a pleasure towards not only to the people, but I believe to God also. Because the emunah, the faith in God through music, through the traditional music, is the highest expression of faith with the music. So here we are.
Yeah, and during your period in South Africa, your main contribution was to write music accompaniments for other shuls in South Africa, as far as I understand.
Absolutely. I wrote a lot of piano accompaniments for the concerts, and also, there was no way of obtaining any scores of music, but we used to get records from chazonim and choirs, mostly from America, and I used to sit down and notate it, writing it down, and immediately they stood in the line, all the chazonim in Johannesburg. I want a copy, I want a copy. Today you do it 1, 2, 3. Eventually the Xerox machine came, so we were able to go to the Jewish shop and make copies, and I gave it to all of them, and we ended up that all the shuls, or most of the shuls in Johannesburg used to sing my arrangements.
Yeah, and during that period, of course, you met Beatrice, and your first son was born there.
So Isaac was
and-
born there. Beatrice came from Highlands North, as they call it. My late father, I did not know my mother-in-law because she died a young woman, so I never met her. But Beatrice, my father-in-law, Louis Kaplan, who was one of the heads of the Mizrahi and the Zionist Federation in South Africa, a religious man.
He was the treasurer.
And he was a treasurer, Beatrice reminds me. And it was wonderful to get into that family, a wonderful family. And that's how I met Beatrice. And then Zevi was born, yeah.
And then you needed to make money for the family, so you put in an application to a shul that some of us know as Edgware United Synagogue.
Yes, of course.
Can you tell me anything about that? What happened when you put that application in?
Actually, it had nothing to do with the money.
Right.
Because as a matter of fact, at that time, the United Synagogue used to pay a very small salary.
Yes.
But it was an honor to be there. And I wanted to get out of South Africa because apartheid and I did not quite agree.
No.
And I didn't think that apartheid had anything to do with, despite the fact that they were religious Christian people, I don't think it went quite well with religion. So yes, I put an application and I got immediately a telephone call from Maurice Ostroff, who was the senior, Maurice Ostroff and Sam Weiss. These two gentlemen were the honorary officers. There was a treasurer, of course, and Joe Perlmutter. And they called me and they said, come to London, we are looking for a chazan. So there is a story here. I remember that I felt that my shul in Johannesburg, Yovel Shul, would not be terribly happy that I was going to leave them or to try out another shul. So the Mizrahi, I used to sing for the Mizrahi, for the religious Zionists in Johannesburg a lot. I did it in London subsequently too. And I arranged, so the secretary of the Mizrahi in Johannesburg wrote a letter to the secretary of the Mizrahi in London. And they said, yes, they have Yom Ha'atzmaut, very big dinner. Used to be at Marble Arch Synagogue downstairs at the ballroom. King David Hall used to be called.
Yep.
And they invited me to be the guest performer. Eventually my friend, the Cantor Simon Haas from the Central Synagogue used to sing there a lot. Yeah. But he was going to America for something. And so they got stuck and they were very happy that a guest from Johannesburg will sing at the dinner. So I came, I told my members and I came to London. I davened the Shabbos in Edgware with the choir. And I had a wonderful choir. The choir master was Ellen Kuttner, Dr. Ellen Kuttner, PhD. And Ellen was a salesman in medical things, and he was not used to the chazanut of Eastern Europe. And I sat with him, and he became probably the best choir master in London over the years. Unfortunately, he died from corona in London, and he's not with us anymore. But he was wonderful, and I davened at Shabbos. And they asked me, Ostroff and Sam Weiss asked me if I would stay for another Shabbos because there was a big bar mitzvah and they needed the chazans. So I said yes. So they paid for the difference in the ticket. And that was just before the 6-day war. Just before the 6-day war. And it was also the early days of the arrival of Chief Rabbi Jacobowitz, as it happens, from Fifth Avenue Synagogue. and I sang daven the second Shabbos, and Motzei Shabbos they gave me a draft of the contract, and you say go to see the chief rabbi because he has to give the okay. I went to see him, and of course he was at the dinner for the Mizrahi on Yom Ha'atzmaut, and he said, of course you are one of us, and here is a picture of Rabbi Jacobovich, Chief Rabbi Jacobovich. I adored him, adored this man, and then that was. I remember I went to visit my uncle who was the chief rabbi of Den Haag in Holland, and I went after that to visit my cousin who lived at that time. She's in Israel now, in Zurich, in Switzerland. And I was offered a job in Switzerland because I was there on Shabbat. And I said, no, I'm now negotiating somewhere else and I don't do things like that. And the etiquette is extremely important, and I will never break any agreement, of course. And then I flew back to Johannesburg, and that was May, late May already. No, June. It was late June, and I davened still Rosh Hashanah because I didn't want to leave the shul so soon before Rosh Hashanah. And in January 1968, we flew to Israel to visit my parents. By then, Zebi was born, and they wanted to see their first grandchild. And then Shabbat Shirah, the Sabbath of Song, we arrived before that in London. So I started February something. We arrived in London, and we lived in a temporary house until the home.
Avenue.
Where
in
were
Broadfields
we? 43 Broadfield Avenue.
Right.
And then, of course, the United Synagogue purchased the house at 7 Hazel Gardens. And soon after that, we moved there.
And you got to know Reverend Amias, the senior minister, very well.
Of course.
Yes.
You know, Reverend Amias's father was a chazan. In, what's the name of that? In the West End, at that time, that part of the West End was not very...
Bronsbury.
No,
Yeah.
not Bronsbury, Beatrice, no. It was not a very nice neighborhood.
Right.
And his father was the chazan there, so Saul Amias was there. But Saul Amias, when I was inducted to on a Sunday service, and Jacobovich came, and of course Amias, he gave an interview, Amias, to the newspaper. There used to be a newspaper, not a Jewish one, a local Jewish newspaper. And Saul Amias says, this is a latter day in my life that I'm getting such a chazan, a young chazan like this.
Right.
And I didn't even know. I had to ask Beatrice, what does it mean, a letter day, a red letter day in my life? I had to ask her what it meant.
Right. Well,
But
I'm now going to play one of your recordings from 2010 in Riga, and then we'll relate it to Edgware.
okay.
Shema veni musar avicha ve'aletito shtorat imecha. Shema veni musar avicha ve'altitosh torat imecha. Torah, Torah, Moshe, Morasha, Morasha, Kehilat Yaakov, Torah, Tzilva, Tzilva lanu Moshe, Morasha, Morasha, Kehilat Yaakov, Morasha, Morasha, Kehilat Yaakov.
Right, well, you introduced that to our community, and every chazan since then has retained it and sings it to our bar mitzvah boys.
That was the idea. That was the idea. As a matter of fact, after I introduced it, it became such an institution at the Edgware synagogue that I could never go away on vacation, on holiday. I remember once an episode. Eventually, I managed to get 2 weeks holiday whilst I was entitled, I don't know, month holiday, whatever. So we flew to Israel, of course, to be with my parents. And I got a telephone call from Maurice Ostrov. He says, Yossi, we have a big problem. I said, what happened? So he says, you know, we have a bar mitzvah. We didn't remember and we let you go. Now the parents of the bar mitzvah are screaming. The chazan is away. What's going to be with the davening, with the Shema B'ni? Listen, my child, to the teaching of your father and do not forsake the teaching of your mother. And so I said, so what shall I do? You want me to daven virtually? So at that time, there was no Zoom, of course, and I wouldn't do it on Shabbos, obviously. So he says, fly in. It was a long day. Fly in on Friday and then leave on Sunday back for Israel. You think I didn't do it?
Right. Well,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually walked to a neighbouring shul on Shabbos to Stanmore, and the cousin used to be in Edgware, and he sang Shema B'ni this Shabbos in Stanmore.
Good for him.
Can you remember any what other innovations you made besides Shema B'ni, which we might still have or not?
In terms of innovation, for example,
Sim Shalom.
no, but the melody of Sim Shalom.
We're going to come on to that because
that melody I got in New York from the composer, but I made it famous all over the world, and all the chazonim are singing it all the time. This one tries to rearrange it, and I keep telling them, don't rearrange, just sing it as it is.
Yeah, we're going to come on to that when you get to America, because I think you did that when for your audition there.
That's right, on the Shabbat of the audition, correct.
Yes, and in those days, did you have bat chayils or bat mitzvahs, and did you sing Eishes Chayil to them?
No, I did not. What I did, that's an innovation, but not in Edgware. I did it in New York.
Right.
When there is a bar mitzvah, of course, I sing the Shema B'ni. But one day, one of my members, a very prominent member, well, Fifth Avenue Synagogue, everybody regards himself as prominent. So they are, one of the very prominent members said to me, you know, we are having a bat mitzvah of our granddaughter. I'd like you to sing something about like Shema B'ni for a bar mitzvah. So I sat down, I opened the concordance of the Bible concordance, and I looked for the word Shema or Shim'i for a young lady. And I found some verses in the book of Psalms, Shim'i bat urei. In one of my discs, where I'm way outside, you can see me wearing a white jacket. I composed it. And ever since, I sing it, of course, when there is a bat mitzvah. Right. But we do the bat mitzvah in our shul either on a Sunday or on Shabbat after the davening.
Right, yes. Yes, we do it after the davening as well. Now, during your time in Edgware, you qualified at the Royal Academy of Music, and you were a fellow at Trinity College of Music, and performed in several concerts, often raising money for charities and good causes. There was a concert held at the banqueting house in Whitehall with the Kinnock Choir, in which you shared the platform with pianist Ernest Chain, the Nobel Prize co-laureate, who had worked on penicillin, and the leader singer Ralph Conn, and you possibly performed at another at the Royal Albert Hall with the Edgware Choir in the late 60s, early 70s for a cantorial event where Jan Pearce was one of the Chazanim. Do you remember
Yes,
any of it? Do you remember
of
those
course,
concerts? Yeah.
But I want to correct one
Yes.
point that you made.
Yes.
I hope you don't mind.
Not at all.
When I was in South Africa,
Yes.
I entered the exams of the 4 Royal Musical Colleges in England: the Royal Academy, the Royal College, the Royal Manchester College, and another one, I don't remember
Scotland.
now. Which one?
Scotland, I think.
No, maybe all Scottish. And so I already got the diploma from the 4 of them together when I was still in South Africa.
LRSM.
This is licentiate of the Royal Schools of Music.
Right.
One from Trinity College, that is true. I did it when I was in England, was not a big deal.
Right.
Thank God the music education in Israel was and is on an extremely high level. And so it was not a problem.
And how about broadcasting? I think you were on ITV's Songs That Matter. Were you on any television programs?
Of course.
Yes.
Of course. Right. It was before Purim. And out of the blue, I got a telephone call from BBC. And I think it was BBC or the ITV, I'm not sure now. I think it's BBC. And they asked me, Stars on Sunday. And I'm glad Beatrice is here. She remembers even better than me. And I sang 2 songs. One song was Shoshanat Yaakov, right. Shoshanat Yaakov, with a beautiful choir. They gave me a choir of professional singers. And the second song was Shira Malos, attributed to Yossele Rosenblatt. He made it famous. Shira Malos, lo and behold, about 2 weeks later, the mailman, postman, you call them, knocked at our door, and he said, Mr. Malovany, you have here a letter from Buckingham Palace, and you have to sign that you received it. So I said, how many times do you want me to sign? I'll sign it. So there was a letter from the secretary of the Queen, or I don't know, whatever they call it. I was commanded by Her Majesty the Queen, I remember distinctly, to congratulate you on beautiful singing of Jewish music, something like that, I don't remember. But I remember it says, I was commanded by Her Majesty the Queen. And you know something, quietly when we say in our shul, the prayer for the government of the United States, I say quietly still the prayer also, of course, Israel, obviously, for Her Majesty. And it was very nice. Yeah, and I think she's an unbelievable lady, and may she live for many years to come.
In good health.
In good health, of course.
Indeed. And while you were there was a discussion as to whether the United Synagogue should use the Ashkenazic or Sephardic pronunciation.
Oh,
were you involved in that?
Very much so. Very well. Thank you for reminding me. Where did you get all the information? You know, having in South Africa, all the shuls daven in Israeli accent. So, of course, I had no problem when I came from Israel to South Africa in 4.5 years that I was there. It was coming to England that my dentist was making a very good living on me. I was breaking my teeth to daven in the Ashkenazi accent until I went to see the Chief Rabbi Jacobowitz, and the Chief Rabbi said to me, "What difference does it make to you?" I said, "To me, it makes difference. First of all, I'm used to the Israeli accent. Secondly, it's tough to sing in the Ashkenazi accent for me. Other people who grew up on it, that's fine with them. So no, it's got to stay like this." So I said, "Oh, what can I do?" So I worked on myself, and eventually I got well into it. By the way, at Fifth Avenue Synagogue, I daven in Ashkenazi accent. So I did it. I learned how to do it. I remember I called the Chief Rabbi, "I want to see you." So he said, "Come over." And for a little while, he co-opted me to be, he used to have a cabinet of ministers. He co-opted me to work on Nusach, to be a member of the cabinet in charge of the issues of prayer and the music of the prayer. And that was wonderful. I was so happy. We used to have meetings, even if the subjects of the meetings were nothing to do with tefillah, but just to be with him, with this brilliant man. So eventually one day, Reverend Amias comes to me. He says, "Yossi, I have some good news for you." He was struggling to read the Torah in the Israeli accent. And I was struggling to daven in the Ashkenazi accent. So both of us had problems. And he said to me, "Yossi, I have news for you. The Chief Rabbi and his cabinet decided that every shul can do whatever they want, either this accent or that accent." So I said, "Wonderful." So I gave where I stand in the shul on the bima, and the honorary officers are on the box in front. Yeah. I gave a pat to Morris also, Morris, from next Shabbos, Israeli accent. I remember he said to me, "How?" Chief Rabbi said, "It's okay, ask Sol Amias, he'll tell you." And then we moved to the Israeli accent, yes.
Now, you said you had a close relationship with the then Chief Rabbi, Lord Emanuel Jacobowitz, but do you think that I, speaking on behalf of the Edgware community, should register our collective regret that he invited you to sing at his daughter's wedding in St. John's Wood?
Yeah. Well, Spencer, I must tell you, of course I sang, and after that there was a reception at the Royal Festival Hall, in the lobby of the Royal Festival Hall, and there were zillions of people there. Beatrice and I, of course, were invited. I remember I came home hungry because we couldn't get to food. People were fighting over food. It was ridiculous. And then I see Rabbi Jacobowitz, and he says to me, "Do you know there are members of the Fifth Avenue Synagogue who flew in for the wedding? Did you meet them?" So I said, "I had no idea. I don't know who they are. I don't know anything." And he says, "Look around." I said, "What, am I going to test everybody what accent they speak English?" So I did not meet them at the reception. Following morning after shul davening, after minyan, I came home, the phone rings, and on the line was, "My name is Herman Merkin." I remember the way he was talking, the takif, as they say, tap. "I am the president of Fifth Avenue Synagogue." I said, "Mr. Merkin, I heard that you are in town. I was looking out for you, but I didn't know how you look like, and you didn't know how I look like, so how could we meet?" So he says, "Come this evening to the Churchill Hotel, where we are staying, and we want to talk to you." So we got a babysitter for the two children, and Beatrice and I went over, and he says, "We'd like to offer you the position of Chazan." That was February 1971. February 1971. He says, "Come after Pesach. Come after Pesach to New York. We'll pay all the expenses, everything. You'll get a nice check. come and daven Shabbos. And that's where I got the Sim Shalom also,
Right.
because we started davening at 9 o'clock and we finished at 1:15, and nobody moved. Nobody moved. So that's the story how it came about. Yeah.
Right. I think we ought to move swiftly on to America now. We've spent the last 48 years. I believe Fifth Avenue gave you the Sim Shalom to sing at your audition, which many people think is your sort of signature tune. So let's now talk about the people you've interacted with in America. First, in your own community, where eminent people seem to congregate, Elie Wiesel, Herman Wouk, author of The K Mutiny, Leonard Bernstein, who expressed his hope that you would sing beyond the altar, and many others. Can you tell us about some of these people and possibly some of the famous visitors who have attended?
So you mentioned first Elie Wiesel. Elie came from the same town, today it's Romania, Sighet, where my mother came from. I already mentioned it. And Elie and I were the closest friends you can ever think. He and I used to speak at least 3 times a week. Wherever he was out of New York, or if I was out of New York, we always found each other and we spoke about many things. Elie was an unbelievable a musical man, never studied music, but he could play a little bit the violin. He tried in his young years to conduct choirs, which he did, I believe, very nicely. And I never saw him doing, but he and I were extremely, extremely close. And we used to speak about everything. I wrote about 2 years ago in a book that came in memory of Elie Wiesel, about Elie Wiesel, the davener. Because when he had yahrzeit for his father, for his mother, for his sister, Elie always, during the week, or Psuke de Zimra, or Maftir on Shabbos, Elie always looked at me and he just sang it with a lovely, lovely, beautiful little tenor voice, highly, highly musical, highly, highly knowledgeable. And he and I became the closest possible friends. Whenever we had cabinet ministers from Israel, including Menachem Begin when he was prime minister, at our home for Shabbat meal, Elie was one of the people who came, of course. And so Elie and I became very, very friendly. And I officiated, I organized, I ran his funeral at our shul. And the New York Times published a picture where I was kissing the aron, the coffin. And they published it. I did not look, of course, for publicity, but that was my goodbye to him. Then we went to the cemetery and everything else. Leonard Bernstein, used to come to shul only on Yom Kippur. Only Yom Kippur. Not Kol Nidre night, but he came for Musaf. And he sat right away in the front row. He was a member, but he did not come. That's when he came to shul. The first year, or the second year, when he came Yom Kippur, at that time, the rabbi was Rabbi Emanuel Rackman, who became the president of Bar Ilan University. When they gave him to open the Ark on Yom Kippur, V'chol Ma'aminim. And I have a beautiful melody that I sing, a happy one. Da-dam ba-ba-bam, da-da-dam, da-da-dai, dai-dai, da-da-da-da-dai. Da-da-dam, 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 da-da-dai, da-dam, bam, 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 bam. And so on and so forth. He stood in front of the Aron Kodesh and started conducting the whole shul. He conducted Lenny Bernstein. And then he went to Rabbi Rackman and he gave him a kiss. They hugged each other. Apparently they knew each other from before. And then he came down from the Aron Kodesh, came right up to me, to the bima, gave me a kiss in the middle of my davening. He didn't care anything. I became very friendly with him. I remember once I was walking on the west side. It was a beautiful day and I wanted to walk through the park. and he lived at the corner of West 72nd and the Central Park West.
Dakota.
It's called the Dakota. Also, the guy from the those
One of the
English
Beatles.
from the Beatles. One of the Beatles lived in the same building, and I don't remember his name. So suddenly Lenny Bernstein comes out, and Lenny is. I see he doesn't look well, and he doesn't walk well. And I went over to, "Oi, my cousin is here." He sent he's the guy who helped him to walk. He said, "Go home. I'm going to go with my cousin." And Lenny could hardly walk. So I said to him, "Lenny, what happened to you?"
Where you going?
So he said, "Where are you going?" He says, "I'm going to see the doctor on 5th Avenue, the other side of the park, of Central Park." So I said, "Come, it's a beautiful day, let's walk." He said, "I'm walking with you. Unless you want to take a taxi," I said to him. He said, "No, we are going to walk." So we walked, and I said to him, "What happened?" He says, "I was in Mexico, and I conducted at the Opera House." I said, "Yes, I know the Opera House. I've sung there 2 or 3 times. It's called Bellas Artes." And he says, "I ate there," as he used the word, there, you know what kind of food that they give in Mexico. And he says that turned, but he was already sick. And 2 weeks before he died, I was still holding his hand. When Elie Wiesel died, I held his hand at Friday night before he died on Shabbos morning. And I was talking. I remember with Elie, I said to him, "Elie, I need a favor from you." He says, "What's the favor?" He says, "Sei gesund." I said, "Be well." So that was Elie Wiesel and Lenny Bernstein. After that, Yitzhak Perlman, I managed to get him to come to our shul. He became more religious. His wife is very religious, even more than him. And he started coming to us. Whenever I used to finish the davening on Rosh Hashanah, he stood up, and it was difficult, as you know, he has a problem. And he stood up and he shouted, "Bravo, bravo." Yitzhak Perlman.
Can I ask you about
I was not used to get a bravo for davening.
Can I ask you about the davening? Has your approach to synagogal music and the shul shifted from cantorial solos to congregational participation over the years?
Yes, I always believed in singing. In fact, you may remember that even when I was in Edgware, I started bringing in here and there some melodies so that the congregation should try to sing along. Luckily, I had the choir, which was very helpful. But the melodies that I introduced in our shul were consistent in quality, in matters of nusach, which we are fighting at Yeshiva University very much to make sure that it's preserved. Yes, so I started singing. As a matter of fact, it's wonderful because now that the congregation knows, even when we get new members all the time, they sing along. They sing along, but it's based on nusach. I will never break away an inch away from nusach.
Well, that's something that Fifth Avenue and Edgware have in common.
Yeah. Yeah.
Staying with New York, let's talk about Yeshiva University. In 1985, you became its distinguished professor of liturgical music at the Philip and Sarah Belt School of Jewish Music there. And 12 years later, in 1997, the Joseph Malovany Chair for Advanced Studies in Jewish Liturgical Music was established. And your teaching has established a cadre of cantors with highly professional techniques in the United States and beyond. And in late 2009, you were awarded an honorary degree, Doctor of Humane Letters, honoris causa, the first cantor ever to receive an honorary doctorate from Yeshiva University. You must be very proud of your association with YU.
I am very proud, and I must congratulate you that you've done your homework very well. And you know, Spencer, they offered me to become the director of the school, but I felt that I couldn't do it. I don't know if I was born into administration, but I could handle that. The problem is that concertizing also, and my shul never objected to going out and do concerts all over the world, as long that the name of Yeshiva University is mentioned and the name of Fifth Avenue Synagogue. Because some of my prominent members were members of the board of the university. And so I said, no, I will not become the director. Maybe one day when I retire from singing, so they offered me, then they had a meeting with me and they offered me to become distinguished professor. So there were two prominent Jews in New York who were distinguished professor, Elie Wiesel in the City University of New York, and me at Yeshiva University. And I'm very proud of it. And I must tell you that my wife is even more proud. She loves it.
Quite rightly.
Whenever there is an academic convocation or something, and I wear my
English.
What's the
The
name
Trinity College.
from Trinity College, the purple thing around my neck. When Yeshiva University saw
hood.
that, the hood they call it. They immediately said, no, he has to come and be a distinguished professor. And I became distinguished professor. And I must tell you, they say, Mikol melamdai hiskalti. I learn more from my students. They attempt to understand the connection between the text and the music that is attached to that particular text is extremely important, which proves to us that the nusach of the davening, to a large extent, is as old as the text of the davening. With certain nuschaot, this is the musical motifs of any particular prayer. A certain of them are called Misinai, from Sinai. And so there is a belief, although we cannot prove it because there was no system of recordings and no system of writing music. It went from father to son and from father to son. And eventually when they went to Rome on exile, Christianity stole a lot from our music. And I can prove it to you with a lecture of 2 hours, what they stole from us. The minor third, let me leave it at that.
Right.
At that. Da, 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 da. You hear it all the time from them, sometimes on TV. That belongs to us.
Yeah.
It's ours. And yes, I enjoy doing it, and I'm proud being a distinguished professor, and the chair in my name, it's very nice. If I could have it, I don't want to get up, I would show you the chair. They gave me a little chair
Right.
at the time and also the rabbinic section of Yeshiva University also gave me an extra honor of some sort. So we are now family. We are family. I've gone through already 3 presidents of Yeshiva University. At Fifth Avenue Synagogue, I'm on my 5th rabbi. Usually it's the other way around. The rabbi remains, and Chazonim, I don't know, something, 48 years, I think it's quite...
It is indeed.
Quite a thing, yeah.
Now, in late 1989, you were received by the Lubavitch Rebbe, and I want people to hear what he said about you and Chazanut.
Well, I already became... I'm sorry?
We're going to play 1 minute of it.
Okay.
Maar ik wil de wereld wezen van zich, dat kan in keinem zijn. Het is van andere leven. Ik zag viele dingen, kommt da viel zu.
Und zusammen mit der Woche von Rebbe, das ist allemal eine Sache besser.
Ja.
Mein Freund Bela, mein Sohn Bela, was soll mein Sohn Elisa, will sein, studiert zu werden ein Doktor in der Yeshiva University.
Dr. Refe Schele.
Refe Schele, ist das schön?
Ich weiß nicht, in der Früh, das Segel, haben wir viel gestellt, haben wir nicht immer, wir hatten noch Trillen nicht gehabt.
Mit Trillen?
Dann die Preventing.
What a purple.
Right. Perhaps I should mention that in the clip, you're accompanied by your wife Beatrice and your son Dr. Ellis, who was born in Hazel Gardens during your time in Edgeworth.
Correct. His name is Ellis. His English name is Ellis. He's not a medical doctor. He's a PhD, and he's a businessman. And from him, we have 3 grandchildren. Our oldest granddaughter got married 2.5 weeks ago. So we are very happy. In Muncie, that's a very religious conclaves in upstate New York. And she's a student at Columbia University in psychology and arts. The second one is, her name is Aria. She is a student at Baruch College. She's very much interested in business. All very frum, obviously, very religious. And our grandson Naftali, who is named after my father, he's just finishing in June high school.
Right. And besides the Lubavitch Rebbe, you also met the Satmar Rebbe and discussed Nusach with him.
Oh, you know, the Satmar Rebbe was a close friend of my grandfather in Siget, whom I am named after. So whenever I came to see him, he used to get up and walk over to me and gave me his hand to say Shalom Aleichem. And his secretary said, no, Rebbe, why? He says, I'm not getting up for him. I'm getting up for his grandfather, who was my chaver, was my friend.
The memory.
And I sat with him many times, and the famous joke that I have is that he said to me, you know, we're having a problem. We spoke Yiddish, of course. And he says, we're having a problem. I said, what's the problem? He says, our young people in Satmar don't know how to daven like our holy forefathers. They don't know Nusach. So I said, Rebbe, I came to the conclusion that there is similarity between modern Orthodoxy and Satmar. So he screamed and he said, impossible, cannot be. So I said, Rebbe, it's my opinion. So impossible. Then he says, okay, tell me. He said to me, why are they similar? I said, Rebbe, in our modern Orthodox community, the young people also don't know how to daven.
Right.
So he loved, he had a tremendous sense of humor, and he was a huge Talmid Chacham.
Right.
A great. Also the Bobov Rebbe was very strong in melodies and nigunim. And whenever, I became close with him still for our days in London. And so the Rebbe, the old Rebbe, well, unfortunately, the old Rebbe's father was killed in the Holocaust, but the Rebbe himself was composing whenever he had a new melody. He used to call me with his meshorerim, his guys, a so-called choir, and they used to sing it for me on the telephone, and they asked me, I should give my okay. Is it a good melody? Does it go? And I said, absolutely yes. One day, when we still lived in London, the Rebbe was in Bournemouth, and we took off for that Shabbat, and we went, all of us, to Bournemouth, to another hotel, but to daven with the Rebbe and to be with him. During Shalosh Shudas, Seudah Shlishit, the third meal on Shabbat, the Rebbe said that he has a new melody. He assembled his choir, and they started singing. So when they finished, and it was quite a complex piece, Ava Rachamim Heitiva, when we take the Torah out, Heitiva Virtzoncha es Zion, Tivnei Chomot Yerushalayim, build the walls of Jerusalem. And when he finished, he says to me, Chazal Malovany, nu, wo sagt ihr? what do you say about this melody? So I said, this melody can only be composed with the Holy Spirit, with Ruach HaKodesh.
Yeah.
So he said, shh, he told the Hasidim to be quiet. And he told them that 1 year, many years before, Yossele Rosenblatt came to Bobov in Galicia, in Poland. And he went to the Rebbe, to the Bobov Rebbe. Oh. And they sang a new melody. And the Rebbe asked Yossele Rosenblatt, "Nu, Rabbi Yossele, wo sagt ihr? What do you say about it?" And Yossele Rosenblatt said, and I had no idea that he said it. He said, only Beruach HaKodesh. Or it can be composed with the Holy, through the Holy Spirit. So I said to him, no, with a little bit of a chutzpah. No, I said to him, from one Yossele to another Yossele.
Right. We're now going to listen to the first of two of your recordings from your 1990 LP. This one is Magablu Masercho, and I've chosen this since most people who appreciate Chazanut are familiar with the Lewandowski Tzadikatomo, but
correct,
not this very fine piece, and I wish it could be heard more frequently at Friday night services. I think I should add that you serve or have served as Honorary President of the Cantorial Council of America, are the past chair of the board of the American Society for Jewish Music, and are the founder and president of the World Jewish Music Foundation, dedicated to understanding tolerance, religious freedom, and human rights via music. More recently, there was a ceremony electing you to the Manhattan Jewish Hall of Fame, the only Chazan so far to have achieved this honor. How did it come about, and what does it mean to you?
It comes about through a telephone call. Yes, well, the Hall of Fame established it, a gentleman established it, a group of prominent Balabatim members of the community. And I was invited among, we were, I think, 5 or 6 people who live in Manhattan to receive this great honor, which I was very proud to receive it. They all the time talk about Hall of Fames for sports people. Well, it's so nice that I got into Hall of Fame of Jewish leadership, because I'm very much involved in Jewish leadership. I'm very much involved. I think that the Chazan, the concept of Shliach Tzibur, the concept, as we say on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, one of the attributes of the Chazan, Shliach Tzibur, is Meorav Bedat Im Habriot, involved with the community. And that's extremely important. And I attribute this involvement, not only the fact that I'm so long in the shul, that because of my involvement in all kinds of things. Every prime minister of Israel since Yitzhak Rabin has been a friend, has been to our home. Cabinet ministers, members of the Knesset, chief rabbis, chazanim, and then of course my own members, obviously.
Sure.
So it's important. As a matter of fact, this is what I got for the Hall of Fame. I don't know how much you can see.
Yes, we can see it.
Hall of Fame.
Fine. Yeah.
My wife Beatrice showed it for me. And all the other things, it's just involvement.
Right. I'm now going to play a shorter piece from that 1990 album, a lighter piece, Rejoice Ye with Jerusalem.
Cool.
Simfu es Yerushalayim, Vekilu vakollo hoveyo, hoveyo. Sisui Tomasos, con la missa blimoleo. 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 I yam di ram ba ba. Si sui Tommasos con la missa blimoleo. 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 Simfu es Yerushalayim, Vekilu vakollo hoveyo. Si sui Tommasos con la missa blimoleo. 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 Ai di dai dai dai. Ai dai 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 dai. Si sui Tommasos con la missa blimoleo.
Right.
By the way, I am accompanied by the Hungarian State Orchestra. This is most prominent. It was recorded in Budapest.
Right. I had hoped to go to many other countries, but of course time is not on our side. But you have asked me to play Timcher Zecher. Would you like me to play that now?
By all means, because you can
because
hear interesting, even a touch of the tropes of Megillat Esther, the book of
And I
Esther.
think it's a magnificent work. So let's listen to that. It's
Sure.
the longest piece we'll hear.
אשר עשה לך עמלק בדרך בצאתכם ממצרים אחריך ואתה עייף ויגע ולא
You know, a Toronto newspaper described you as the Pavarotti of the synagogue, and listening to that, I understand what he meant.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I very much appreciate
I
it.
had hoped that we would go on to discuss Israel, Eastern Europe, and the Soviet Union, but the time is against us, and hopefully we'll be able to have another interview some other time.
Anytime. Thank you so much.
So I think now that we're drawing to a close, I want to talk about music more generally. With your musical talents, the world could have been your oyster if only it had been kosher. Whatever you turned your mind to, and I'm now going to illustrate this with short pieces with you. At the end, I want you to tell us, all of us, if you would have been world famous in each of these activities and why you chose the synagogue instead. Firstly, performing at a non-cantorial Hanukkah concert, singing "See the Conquering Hero Comes," the chorus from Handel's Judas Maccabeus. And Freddie, that's number 9. Next, with you conducting, And this is in St. Petersburg in 1995.
This is probably the overture to La Forza del Destino from Verdi.
Right, and you mentioned that you're a pianist. Here's a very informal clip with you accompanying yourself at the piano. Very short piece. And finally, with you singing in Bizet's opera, The Pearl Fishers, with Stephen Texon. And could I ask Elliot to come in about halfway through, because it is a longer piece.
Mais à travers la foule et la sauvage passage, sans voile déjà nous cache son visage. L'ouragan אשר שמר
Well, very briefly, why didn't you go to the concert halls? Why didn't you become a conductor? Why didn't you become a pianist? And why didn't you do the opera? Why did you go into the synagogue instead?
Two reasons. One is because if God gave me a voice, I wanted to serve him with it. As a religious Jew, that's number one. Number two, to be an opera singer, there is always the danger of Friday night, Yom Tov night, and there is no way, or conducting, there is no way I would do anything of that sort on Shabbat and Chagim and the holidays. So the best exposure, and I loved that tefillah, and it came to me from the age of 8 as part of my life ever since. So that's how it is. I just chose that one. I could have gone to the opera. Leonard Bernstein wanted me to go to he said, I'll take you into the Met. I said, Leonard, thank you very much. I'm going to have tzores. I'm going to have problems in the shul and everything else. Leave it alone. I'll sing arias, duets, and everything at concerts. That's fine, but not. But the conducting is very much in my heart. And if you will give me to get today a very good the London Symphony Orchestra, and will decide what piece they want me to conduct, I'll be happy to do that.
Well, Cantor Joseph Malovany, I wish to say that it's been a great pleasure and privilege talking to you this evening, and we're all grateful to you for all your wonderful efforts over a lifetime to preserve and enhance traditional cantoral music. You've just said that God gave me the gift of a voice, and I'll use that voice to serve him. You may formally be the Chazan of Fifth Avenue, but you've served him worldwide and built up a formidable reputation. Beyond America, you've received awards throughout the Jewish world. You've almost single-handedly revived cantoral music in what was once the USSR and have enhanced training in Eastern and Central Europe. Yours has been and is a most remarkable career, and we all wish to thank you for your incredible work over a lifetime. We salute your achievements and trust that you will remain active and give a lead at the highest level for many years to come. Finally, a few weeks ago in correspondence with me, you wrote, I hope that the leaders of Edgware Shul, as a result of the interview, will extend an invitation for me to sing at the shul I've always loved, perhaps after the pandemic. We look forward with eager anticipation to spending a Shabbos in our community when we can renew friendships and pay tribute in much greater detail to your contribution to the world of Chazanut over a professional career spanning more than 60 years. Thank you all for your presence at the event, and it remains for me to wish you Chag Pesach Chashev Sameach. We'll sign off with you singing Sim Shalom with the Jerusalem Symphony Orchestra.
And I would like to say thank you for inviting me, and warm regards to everybody in Edgware and beyond.
Sim Shalom.
שים שלום טובה וברכה, חן וחסד ורחמים, חכמים עלינו ועל כל ישראל עמך שים שלום טובה וברכה חן וחסד ורחמים עלינו ועל כל ישראל עמך ברכנו אבינו אבינו ברכנו אבינו אבינו כולנו כאחד כאחד ביואי פניך ברכנו אבינו אבינו ברכנו אבינו אבינו כולנו כאחד כאחד ביואי פניך שים שלום טובה וברכה ועל כל ישראל עמך שים שלום טובה חן וחסד ורחמים עלינו ועל כל ישראל עמך כי פניך נתת לנו היי כי פניך נתת לנו השם אלוקינו תורת חיים ויחד חסד וצדקה וברכה ורחמים וחיים ושלום שים שלום טובה וברכה חן וחסד ורחמים עמך שים שלום עמך וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשמך וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשמך שים שלום טובה וברכה חן וחסד ורחמים עלינו ועל כל ישראל עמך שים
Right. We're going to stop. We've stopped recording, but we can have an informal discussion now. And I can see that Alex Klein, the director of the European